In heaven he goes on living for all time. There he sits recording the deeds of men and the chronicles of the world. He has another office besides. He is the psychopomp, whose duty is to stand at the crossways in paradise and guide the pious to their appointed places, who brings the souls of sinners up from Gehenna at the approach of the Sabbath, and leads them back again to their merited punishment when the day of rest is about to depart, and who conducts these same souls, after they have atoned for their sins, to the place of everlasting bliss. Elijah's miraculous deeds will be better understood if we remember that he had been an angel from the very first, even before the end of his earthly career. When God was about to create man, Elijah said to him, Master of the world, if it be pleasing in thine eyes, I will descend to earth and make myself serviceable to the sons of men. Then God changed his angel name, and later, under Ahab, he permitted him to abide among men on earth, that he might convert the world to the belief that the Lord is God.
Elijah then appeared like a second Moses. His name means, My God is Yahweh, and is pronounced Elias in Greek and Elias in English. Upon Elijah's birth, his father had a vision of angels swaddling the infant in flames and feeding him fire. This foreshadowed Elijah's future role as prophet, one who speaks for God.
One who speaks for the Most High. Just trying to get that right there. All right. You see that? All right. And so we're going to continue the investigation. Let's rock.
As when he cast down fire upon the earth and spoke words that burned like a lamp. His experience on mountains took him from Carmel to Sinai to Tabor. Likewise, seeing him rise through faith, zeal, and ascetic labor,
We're just talking about priest king type of behavior. All right. Sorry.
even to the heights of heaven. Yet, as St. James reminds us, Elijah was of like a nature to ours, and could be overcome with fear and despondency.
All right. Like unto a nature of ours, okay? Able to overcome fear and despondency. Let's go.
In 1786, he and his elder brother went out with a band of warriors to check or drive back Captain Logan, who was advancing toward Mad River. In an encounter near Dayton, the boy was forced for the first time to face a cavalry charge. He had never imagined anything so terrifying. He saw those great rushing horses, the cruel flash of steel. He forgot his hatred of the white man.
All right. He forgot his hatred of the white. Now that's fear. All right. Let's see if he's able to overcome. Let's go.
Dreams of glory. His only thought was to save his life. He threw down his gun and ran.
It's all right, man.
As soon as he recovered from his fright, he felt very much ashamed of his cowardly conduct.
Rebound.
He was eager for another opportunity to test his courage.
All right.
Fortunately for him, he did not have to wait long.
Okay.
Tecumseh was with a party of Indians who attacked some flatboats on the Ohio River. The boats were taken, and all the men in charge of them were killed except one, who was made a prisoner.
Okay.
This was an important occasion in the life of Tecumseh.
All right.
He acted with such daring and bravery that the old warriors of the party were astonished. Shawnees spoke of Tecumseh.
All right. Now, such bravery that they were astonished. All right. And so how do you go from dropping the gun, you see what I'm saying? And then forgetting your fear of the so-called white man. All right. All right, so now Tecumseh, they were astonished, all right. Almost on some shit like he was Hawashua, all right. They say Hawashua was invincible, all right. They say it couldn't be touched on the battlefield. All right.
Tecumseh as a brave. Besides winning the good opinion of others, he regained his self-respect and conquered fear.
All right, now we can't make this shit up. All right.
Even as he could offer effective prayer that worked wonders.
Okay, let's go.
When he entered adolescence, Chisikau blackened Tecumseh's face and sent him alone into the woods to find his guardian spirit. Tecumseh fasted and meditated, and his spirit came to him in a vision. He never revealed to anyone what form his ethereal guardian took.
All right, and so here you see Tecumseh fasting, meditating. Yo, that's priest Keenish prophet type shit. All right, and so y'all see what's going on here? Huh? We cooking.
Tecumseh soon matured into a strong, intelligent young man. Allegedly, he once slew 16 bison with only a bow and a single quiver of arrows. He also drew no small amount of attention from the opposite sex. The women of the Shawnee.
Wait. All right. 16 bisons with one bow and one arrow. Praise King shit. All right. Show me somebody, you know what I'm saying, they can do that today. Let's rock.
Tecumseh's reputation as a warrior was soon firmly established. He was equally noted as a hunter. Though he had long been pointed out as one of the best Shawnee hunters, many young men had claimed as great success as he. At length, someone suggested.
They fronting. They fronting on the Priest King, huh? Oh man, you see, I've been killing bison, nigga. I'm OG out here. See that? Oh, this is what we call con biz, and that's word to Kermio. That's right.
Suggested a way to decide who was the ablest hunter.
Right.
Let us, said he, each go alone into the forest for 3 days to hunt the deer.
Sounds good.
And the one who brings home the largest number of deer skins shall be considered the greatest hunter.
Well, that's fair. Let's go.
All agreed to this test, and several noted hunters started out.
I'm in.
After 3 days, each returned bearing the evidence of his skill as a hunter. Some proudly displayed 10 skins, some 12.
I got 20.
Last of all came Tecumseh with 35 deer skins.
What?
Then the other Indians.
What? Oh, that's right. He killing 16 at one time. 16 a whop. You old priest king, you. That's
He
right.
first lived in the wilderness and purified his heart through fasting, prayer, and chastity before receiving God's call to go and confront Ahab. As the Lord God of hosts lives, said Elijah to Ahab,
come on,
the God of all Israel before whom I stand,
ambassador,
there shall not be any dew, nor rain during these years, except at my word.
All right, what are we talking? All right, ambassador, all right, messenger, consecrated person, all right, meaning to dispatch as a deputy. From who? The Most High. That's right.
In August of 1810, Tecumseh met with Harrison face to face outside the governor's colonial estate, and the two engaged in a heated parley.
We live, y'all.
Tecumseh insisted that native land could not be bought or sold unless done so collectively by all the tribes acting as one, and that the land ceded to the Americans in the recent treaties still rightfully belonged to the natives. Harrison replied that individual tribes were free to make treaties with the United States, but Tecumseh's confederacy was not recognized, nor did the local tribes welcome his interference in their affairs.
Who the nigga think he is?
The back and forth debate inspired a passionate reply from Tecumseh and his most iconic quote, "Sell a country? Why not sell the air, the great sea, as well as the earth? Did not the Great Spirit make them all for the use of his children?" Tensions soon grew between the two parties. Harrison was quick to point out that the Shawnee themselves had taken land from the Miamis, so what right had they to dictate the affairs of other tribes? If the tribes were all one nation, as Tecumseh claimed, why did the Great Spirit not have them all speak one language? Tecumseh lost his temper, declaring that everything Harrison said was a lie, and that the Americans had cheated the native peoples. He brandished his tomahawk at the governor, prompting Harrison to draw his saber and point it at Tecumseh. A tense standoff ensued, but neither side attacked. Harrison brought the meeting to an end and demanded to...
All right, so what do your priest kings do? They come and go. They go from one place to another, right? The one who crosses.
About 3 years later, Elijah was taken up into heaven, but not without first undergoing a struggle with the angel of death. He refused to let Elijah enter heaven at his translation on the ground that he exercised jurisdiction over all mankind. Elijah not accepted. God maintained that at the creation of heaven and earth he had explicitly ordered the angel of death to grant entrance to the living prophet, but the angel...
Oh, okay. All right, so we got a little situation here, all right? Look like it's some furniture moving between the angel of death and Elijah, all right? Because this priest king, all right? See that? Dispatched, all right, by Hawa. Needs that door so he can go back and forth, all right? But I guess the old death angel didn't get the memo, and so here we go.
Angel of death insisted that by Elijah's translation, God had given just cause for complaint to all other men who could not escape the doom of death. Thereupon God, Elijah is not like other men. He is
a priest king, an angel, a dragon, a meteor.
able to banish thee from the world, only thou dost not recognize his strength. With the consent of God, a combat took place between Elijah and the angel of death. The prophet was victorious, and if God had not restrained him, he would have annihilated his opponent.
He would have annihilated his opponent. That is because he is a what? Dracan.
Accompanied by an entourage of Shawnee, Kickapoo, and Winnebago warriors, the Shawnee chief strode decisively through the Creek village of Tuckabatchee. He was a striking figure, 5 feet, 10 inches tall, handsome, straight-backed, with a slight limp. As he and his warriors made their way through the village, word spread quickly among the Creeks, Tecumseh has arrived. The great Shawnee leader was on the last leg of a mission that had taken him 3,000 miles in 6 months. Beginning in the summer of 1811, he traveled south from Indiana to spread his message of intertribal unity. Night after night, the powerful orator stood before the council fires, exhorting the southern nations to bury their various and long-standing grudges and divisions, and prepare for a collective war against the whites to defend what remained of tribal lands, which were being lost to the United States government at an alarming rate as the young republic pushed westward. 20 years earlier, a decade and a half after the United States declared its independence from Great Britain, the new nation was already bursting at the seams, and westward expansion had become a deeply embedded tenet of the Republic. After the Revolution, the process of acquiring Indian land accelerated as settlers streamed beyond rapidly widening national boundaries. Waves of settlers poured over the Appalachian and Allegheny Mountains into Kentucky, then part of Virginia, Tennessee, then part of North Carolina, and the Old Northwest Territory, which included the future states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio. The migrations inevitably led to confrontations with the indigenous tribes of these regions. Between 1790 and 1795, native resistance escalated on the frontier, a fluid boundary that in the late 18th and early 19th centuries included the Ohio and Mississippi valleys, the future states of Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, and the area around the Great Lakes. Much of this territory remained unstable throughout this period, as a result both of Indian conflicts and of great power rivalries among Spain, Britain, and France, and the upstart United States of America. Beginning with the Treaty of Greenville in 1795, the U.S. government embarked upon an aggressive course of acquiring tribal lands in the Old Northwest, while simultaneously juggling its relationships with the European colonial powers. In the decade that followed the Treaty of Greenville, the tribes of the Old Northwest Territory ceded a staggering amount of land to the federal government, giving up millions upon millions of acres. The devious methods used to obtain these cessions included bribing tribal leaders and/or plying them with liquor, exploiting tribal poverty with promises of annuities and/or threatening to cut off previously guaranteed annuities, striking deals with individuals who had no authority to represent their tribes, and accepting grants of one tribe's land from individuals of another tribe. By 1805, the entire north bank of the Ohio River had been cleared of Indian title. Tecumseh saw the handwriting on the wall. Counting on the British to help him resist the U.S. land grab and defend what was left of the natives' ancestral homelands, he had set out to form a military confederation of northern and southern nations. The British, who obtained Canada from France in 1763 as part of the settlement that ended the French and Indian War, had been watching with alarm as the U.S. encroached on the Canadian border. The American government, on the other hand, was apprehensive about both the Confederation of Indian Tribes and the natives' alliance with the British. Uniting the tribes against European and Euro-American invaders had been attempted before by leaders like the Ottawa warrior Pontiac, the Mohawk organizer Joseph Brant, and the Creek chief Alexander McGillivray. It was a daunting task, considering the fractured, tense relations among and within some of the nations. Yet by 1811, Tecumseh had met with a considerable degree of success in the north, claiming substantial support among the Potawatomi, Kickapoo, and Winnebago tribes, and a lesser degree among the Shawnees, Miamis, Wyandots, Wees, Piankshaws, and others. In August 1811 he headed south, traveling with his retinue to the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Seminole, and Cherokee nations. The trip had not started well. The Chickasaws and Choctaws were not responsive to Tecumseh's call for unity against the whites. Frustrated, he and his followers continued on to the Creeks, his mother's people. Tecumseh's band made their visit to Tuckabashie, in what is now Alabama, in late September, timing their appearance to coincide with the annual Council of the Creek Confederacy, an amalgamation of about 15 different Creek groups, at which Chickasaws, Choctaws, and Cherokees were also in attendance. The thousands of people who were gathered in Tuckabashie, the largest town of the Upper Creeks, included tribesmen, their families, white traders, and government officials. Arriving a few days after the conference had begun, Tecumseh and his entourage electrified the gathering by making a stunning entrance. Tecumseh, at the head of his party, marched into the square, wrote one early chronicler. They were entirely naked, except their flaps, breechcloths, and ornaments. Their faces were painted black, and their heads adorned with eagle plumes, while buffalo tails dragged from behind, suspended by bands which went around their waists. Buffalo tails were also attached to their arms, and made to stand out, by means of bands. Their appearance was hideous, and their bearing pompous and ceremonious. After marching around the square several times, they finally approached the assembled chiefs and presented them with tobacco, a common gesture of friendship. As the council progressed, Tecumseh would come to the meetings in the square each day, but with U.S. Indian agent Benjamin Hawkins present, he refused to speak. "The sun has gone too far today," he would say every evening. "I will make my talk tomorrow." Finally, after more than a week, Hawkins concluded his business with the Creeks and left. That night, before hundreds assembled in the council house, Tecumseh rose to deliver an impassioned recruitment talk, full of fire and vengeance, urging the Southerners to take up the cause of a pan-tribal confederation. No U.S. agents were allowed into the council house, so there is no direct transcription of the speech, but it was a talk Tecumseh had given before and would give again. A reasonable record of a version given a few months later suggests the power of his words on this night. He stood for several minutes before beginning, surveying the assembled warriors, in a very dignified though respectfully complaisant and sympathizing manner. Then he began, his persuasive, evocative rhetoric punctuated by his manly, athletic gracefulness. "Brothers, we all belong to one family, we are all children of the Great Spirit, we walk in the same path, slake our thirst at the same spring, and now affairs of the greatest concern lead us to smoke the pipe around the same council fire. Brothers, we are friends, we must assist each other to bear our burdens. The blood of many of our fathers and brothers has run like water on the ground, to satisfy the avarice of the white men. We, ourselves, are threatened with a great evil, nothing will pacify them but the destruction of all the red men." Looking around at his audience, Tecumseh no doubt reminded the assembly of his familial connection with Tuckabashie. His mother and father had lived in the village, and he still had relatives there. He continued, "Brothers, when the white men first set foot on our grounds, they were hungry, they had no place on which to spread their blankets, or to kindle their fires. They were feeble, they could do nothing for themselves. Our fathers commiserated their distress, and shared freely with them whatever the Great Spirit had given his red children. They gave them food when hungry, medicine when sick, spread skins for them to sleep on, and gave them grounds, that they might hunt and raise corn. Brothers, the white people are like poisonous serpents. When chilled, they are feeble and harmless, but invigorate them with warmth, and they sting their benefactors to death. The white people came to us feeble, and now we have made them strong, they wish to kill us, or drive us back, as they would wolves and panthers. Brothers, the white men are not friends to the Indians. At first they only asked for land sufficient for a wigwam, now, nothing will satisfy them but the whole of our hunting grounds, from the rising to the setting sun. Brothers, the white men want more than our hunting grounds, they wish to kill our warriors, they would even kill our old men, women, and little ones. Tecumseh spoke for hours, delivering a vehement narration of the wrongs imposed by the white people on the Indians, and an exhortation for the latter to resist them. But it was not only military resistance that the Shawnee chief counseled. He also implored his listeners to return to their traditional ways, and to abandon the farming and weaving that had been put on them by white men. He warned them that after the whites had turned all the forests and hunting grounds into farms, they would enslave the red man, just as they had the black man. He urged He warned them that after the whites had turned all the forests and hunting grounds into farms, they would enslave the red man, just as they had the black man. He urged them to employ none of the white man's weapons, but to use instead only the tomahawk, knife, and bow. He pressed them to likewise spurn all the white man's clothing, and to dress themselves in the skins of the animals the Great Spirit had provided for them. His message was, in short, one of religious fundamentalism, which gave his rhetoric that much more power even as it made his plan far less practical. Tecumseh further beseeched the assembled warriors to stand firm against any more land cessions, to replace weak-willed chiefs who would give away the land, and to prepare for battle. He advised them to be outwardly friendly toward whites, to neither steal from them nor fight with them, but to mask their real intentions until the right moment arrived for an all-out war, which he promised would be supported by the British and, more important, by the Great Spirit, who had sent him on this journey. The Great Spirit, Tecumseh told the warriors, had shown his approval of this plan by sending a sign. After all, had his arrival in Tuckabashie not been accompanied by the great comet that now blazed in the northern sky each night? The Great Comet of 1811, with its 15-million-mile wide head and 100-million-mile long tail, was visible for 260 days. And had that comet not increased in brightness during his stay here? And was his name not Tecumseh, shooting star? This was clearly a sign sent by the Great Spirit to bestow his blessing on Tecumseh's mission. He finished up his talk with a fervent call for unity. Brothers, my people are brave and numerous, but the white people are too strong for them alone. I wish you to take up the tomahawk with them. If we all unite, we will cause the rivers to stain the great waters with their blood. Brothers, if you do not unite with us, they will first destroy us, and then you will fall an easy prey to them. They have destroyed many nations of red men because they were not united, because they were not friends to each other.
All right, nine spiral. And so if you look at that verse 6, it's very simple, man, when you start to reason, right? Because whether you're turning the heart to the fathers, uh, and vice versa, or whether you're telling them to shake hands, hug, what we see here is a joining of the two, right? Your mother and father above shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the heart of the children to the fathers, right? The joining of the two. So, one word, Tecumseh, aka Elijah the prophet, was sent to unite.
Brothers, we must be united, we must smoke the same pipe, we must fight each Brothers, we must be united, we must smoke the same pipe, we must fight each other's battles, and more than all, we must love the Great Spirit. He is for us, he will destroy our enemies, and make all his red children happy. For all its passion and power, Tecumseh's talk met with only mixed success. Certain Creeks, like the well-regarded warrior Manawa and the medicine man Josiah Francis, were swayed, but others, like Big Warrior, the head civil chief of Tuckabashie, remained aloof. Tecumseh needed Big Warrior's support to offset the weak response he had received from the Chickasaws and Choctaws. If he could get a commitment from Big Warrior, it might persuade some of the fence-sitters to join the Confederation. In the Creek Chief's lodge, with others present, the Shawnee leader offered gifts and once again gave his talk, but Big Warrior, a mixed blood, remained noncommittal. Frustrated by the indifferent reaction, Tecumseh stood up to leave. He gave Big Warrior a withering look, and then, according to a legend that would soon spread across the frontier like wildfire and convince many Creeks to join him, Tecumseh uttered a prophetic pronouncement. "Your blood is white," he disdainfully told Big Warrior. "You have taken my talk and the sticks and the wampum and the hatchet, but you do not mean to fight. I know the reason. You do not believe the Great Spirit has sent me. You shall know. I leave Tuckabatchee directly and shall go straight to Detroit. When I arrive there, I will stamp my foot on the ground and shake down every house in Tuckabatchee." Then he turned and left. As the legend has it, the Creeks began counting the days, reckoning the time it should take the Shawnee chief to reach Detroit. Early on the morning of December 16, the day of his calculated arrival, Tecumseh's prophecy was fulfilled. The earth began to tremble violently. The Creek village was leveled. The upheaval that shook down every house in Tuckabatchee was the first of the New Madrid earthquakes, the most powerful series of quakes ever to hit the United States. In 1811, the planet was in turmoil, and ominous signs were everywhere to be seen. International or civil wars were being fought throughout Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Central and South America. Europe was locked in the grip of the Napoleonic Wars, and in an extension of the broader hostilities, the British defeated the Dutch in Java. And the French in Madagascar. Internally, England was in convulsion, the war with France having taken a heavy toll on the nation's economy. In March, the Luddite Rebellion began in the county of Nottinghamshire as angry workers smashed machinery in protest against the growing mechanization of the knitting industry. In North America, 1811 was an annus mirabilis, a year of wonders filled with a daunting proliferation of natural phenomena and catastrophic disasters. The year was ushered in by a small earthquake that jostled the cities of Columbia, South Carolina, and Augusta, Georgia, on the 13th of January. During the summer, the Ohio and Mississippi valleys were inundated by massive flooding, which led to widespread, unparalleled illness. Between St. Louis and New Madrid, wrote Daniel Drake, a Cincinnati physician, many parts of the valley were overflown extensively. This was followed, in autumn, by the bilious unremitting fever, which prevailed in that quarter to a great extent. His was clearly referable to the vegetable putrefaction which was the consequence of that flood. Where it was not raining, it was stifling. In the summer months the heat was, in many places, the most intense that was ever known, reported one newspaper. The crops in many parts of the United States were destroyed by drought. In the fall, hurricanes and tornadoes slammed the eastern U.S. from Georgia to Maine. On the 10th of September, a devastating twister struck Charleston, South Carolina, killing more than a dozen people and causing extensive damage to structures. Nashville, Tennessee, was hit by another tornado in late October, reported in the Lexington, Kentucky, American Statesman as having been more violent and destructive than is often heard of. The damage sustained by the citizens of this town cannot have been less than $10,000. Many longtime residents of the area stated that they had never witnessed such a scene of destruction in this country before. In early September, the Great Comet appeared, with a head 15 million miles wide and a tail 100 million miles long, and it was visible to the naked eye for the remainder of the year. As in the case of other comets throughout history, many people took it as a foreshadowing of catastrophe. An article in the Kentucky Gazette tried to assuage people's fears. Anciently, these sidereal erratics were held to be precursors of great calamities, revolutions, pestilence, and wars. But philosophers of later years have ascertained their nature to be like that of the planets, parts of one harmonious whole. On September 17, there was a near total eclipse of the sun. The day was remarkably serene, and the skies entirely clear of clouds, read one account, so that its appearance was the most solemn and impressive that we could. Read one account, so that its appearance was the most solemn and impressive that we could conceive. Animals exhibited strange behavior. A spirit of change and a restlessness seemed to pervade the very inhabitants of the forest, wrote English tourist Charles J. Latrobe. A countless multitude of squirrels, obeying some great and universal impulse, which none can know but the spirit that gave them being, left their reckless and gambling life, and their ancient places of retreat in the north, and were seen pressing forward by tens of thousands in a deep and sober phalanx to the south. No obstacles seemed to check this extraordinary and concerted movement. The word had been given them to go forth, and they obeyed it, though multitudes perished in the broad Ohio, which lay in their path. In retrospect, some of these portents appear to have been directly connected to the impending earthquakes. William Lee Pierce, a traveler on the Mississippi, observed, on the 30th of November, 1811, about 1/2 hour before sunrise, two vast electrical columns shot up from the eastern horizon, until their heads reached the zenith. He went on to note that from then until the first earthquake on December 16, there was a continued want of perfect transparency in the atmosphere, and wherever the sun was even partially visible, it exhibited a dull and fiery redness. The onslaught of unsettling phenomena caused understandably widespread trepidation about what might be coming next. These are no common events, said one newspaper article in a reflection of the general apprehension, and without incurring the charge of superstition, they may be deemed portentous of still greater events. Surely so many occurrences in the course of a few months ought to excite something of meditation and reflection. The moralists seized upon the occasion as an opportunity to issue remonstrances. The great scale upon which nature is operating, warned an editorial in the Lexington American Statesman, should be a solemn admonition to men, are those animals in the shape of men, to abandon their pitiful groveling, schemes of venality and corruption in the prosecution of which they are so ardently engaged. An honest heart, alone, can view those great events, with composure. The political swindler, the assassin of reputation, must feel severely the visitations of conscience, at such momentous periods, when nature appears, in spasmodic fury, no longer to tolerate the moral turpitude of man. Others registered the amazing string of events without drawing conclusions. Whether these things are ominous or not, wrote the Reverend John Kerrigan, one thing is certain, this is a time of extraordinaries. This is the story of the greatest series of earthquakes in the history of this country, of the people caught up in them, of the extraordinary confluence of forces and events leading up to them, and of the upheaval they caused. The United States was at a turning point, one of those defining moments in history when forces converge so powerfully that something has to give. This was true geologically as well as historically. It was almost as if the earthquakes were a symbol of the turmoil of the times. This is the story of the New Madrid, pronounced New Madrid, earthquakes, but it is equally a story about America, and while it describes events that happened 200 years ago, it is replete with themes and issues that reverberate down to the present day and continue to bedevil our nation: expansion, conquest, violence, corruption, greed, race relations, environmental degradation. Between December 16, 1811, and late April 1812, the Mississippi River Valley was rocked by a chain of catastrophic earthquakes. Of the more than 2,000 tremors that hit during this time, 3 would have measured near or over 8.0 on the later devised magnitude scales, ranking them among the severest earthquakes to hit the contiguous United States in recorded history, about as powerful as the shock that devastated San Francisco in 1906. At least 6 others were in the 7.0–7.5 range. Yet today, curiously enough, the New Madrid earthquakes have been all but forgotten except by residents of the area and a handful of earthquake scientists. The New Madrid quakes, centered in what is now the Boot Heel region of Missouri, were felt as far away as Mexico, Canada, Boston, New Orleans, and the Rocky Mountains. 1.5 million square miles were affected, and the earth was in constant movement for nearly 4 months. Towns were destroyed, an 18-mile-long by 5-mile-wide lake was created, and the Mississippi temporarily ran backwards. The quakes spawned an intense albeit short-lived religious revival, and the first federal disaster relief act in U.S. history was enacted by Congress to aid the victims of the quakes, but unintentionally led to a colossal land fraud scandal. The New Madrid earthquakes came on the eve of the War of 1812 and helped shape the direction of the war. When the dust cleared, the course of westward expansion was firmly set. The tribes of the Old Northwest and, with one exception, the South were decisively defeated, and British attempts to regain land south of the Canadian border were finally put to rest. Because the surrounding area was sparsely populated at.
So we've got earthquakes all around the world.
Mhm.
I haven't got to the volcanoes, but let's go here. Tecumseh's Comet and the Prophecy of the Black Sun.
Okay.
Can't make...
Rock with me now. We're going to walk the doggy. Because I asked a question. Has Elijah already came? A prester, a priest king, a dragon king. And I'm going to prove that.
this stuff up, guys. So, his name ominously meant shooting star.
Shooting star. He who walks across the sky, huh?
Walks across the sky. Tecumseh's brother, who was a religious leader known as the Prophet,
Huh?
had predicted a solar eclipse in 1806. So this is what we're being told, is that this prophecy of the Black Sun was...
So Michael Brahm observed the bed of the Mississippi River suddenly rise up like a great loaf of bread to the height of many feet, the uprising being accompanied by a terrible rumbling noise. At its height, the loaf burst as great quantities of sand, water, and black sulfurous vapor were sent shooting upward. I mean, think about that, guys. That's crazy. Just stuff shooting all over the place. So then you have Captain George Riddle, and his unbelieving eyes as the bank caved in 30 yards back from the water. So 30 yards in, the bank just gets sucked in. As far up and down the river as he could see, acres upon acres of land went plunging into the current. One of his cows came rushing toward him in terror. The ground in her path suddenly opened up, and unable to check her momentum, the poor beast went plummeting into a chasm. A swamp suddenly lifted up and become dry land, while the side he stood on was rapidly falling and filling with water. And he says, all the while, ear-splitting explosions echoed around them, and the earth burst everywhere, throwing mud, sand, water, and coal 100 feet toward the sky. Between the quake and the flood, not one of the community's houses was left standing. So think about that devastation. It just seems like it was going insane. So we look here, it says large areas sank into the earth, new lakes were formed, the course of the Mississippi River was changed, and forests were destroyed over an area of 150,000 acres. Houses, gardens, and fields were swallowed up, one source notes, but damages were low because the area was sparsely settled then. We talked about that, how the population at the turn of the century, luckily, had pretty much left, and there wasn't a whole lot left there. But this is the biggest earthquake ever recorded in the contiguous United States, and it occurred that the next one occurred on February 17th or February 7th, 1812, with a magnitude greater than 8 on the Richter scale, we estimate. The first earthquake preceded by 3 other major quakes. So you had 2 on December 16th, and then you had 1 on January 23rd. And then you had another one on February 7th. There are estimates that the earthquakes were felt strongly over 50,000 square miles and were moderately across nearly 1 million to 1.5 million square miles. Million square miles. From December 16th through March of 1812, there were over 2,000 aftershocks in central Midwest and between 6,000 and 10,000 earthquakes in the Bothiel of Missouri, where New Madrid is located near the junction of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. The shockwaves were felt from the East Coast to the Rockies and from southern Canada to northern Mexico. In the known history of the world, no earthquakes have lasted so long or produced so much evidence of damage as the New Madrid earthquakes. Yeah, so they estimate that the February 7th one was 8.8 magnitude. Okay, so the area of strong shaking associated with these shocks was 2 to 3 times larger than that of the 1964 earthquake, 1964 Alaska earthquake, and 10 times larger than the 1906 San Fran earthquake, which we've heard was the big one, right? This is shock waves were felt from the East Coast to the Rockies and from southern Canada to northern Mexico. In the known history of the world, no earthquakes have lasted so long or produced so much evidence of damage as the New Madrid earthquakes. Yeah, so they estimate that the February 7th one was 8.8 magnitude. Okay, so the area of strong shaking associated with these shocks was 2 to 3 times larger than that of the 1964 earthquake, 1964 Alaska earthquake, and 10 times larger than the 1906 San Fran earthquake, which we've heard was the big one, right? This is 10 times larger. It says there were missing people who were most likely swallowed up by the earth. Some earthquake fissures were as long as 5 miles. Think about that, 5 miles long. And then you had these little things, which are sand blows that would shoot out balls of sand, coal, whatever was in there. Okay, so you're seeing what happens here. And for those of you not watching, it's a diagram and you have the different layers. And as the earth shakes and the sand moves and the water, it gets pushed out. All this stuff is going to get pushed to the surface. And that's what they call sand blows. The world's largest sand boil was created by the New Madrid earthquake. It was 1.4 miles long and 136 acres in extent, and it's located in Bothell, Missouri. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at here. This is what they're talking about, is this area of a sand boil, which means the sand was rising and shooting out of the ground. Now, what else did they have? They had seismic tar balls. Small pellets up to golf ball size tar balls are found in sand boils and fissures. They are petroleum that have been solidified or petroliferous nodules. You have earthquake lights, which are lights that flashed up from the ground, caused by quartz crystals being squeezed. The phenomena is called semiluminescence. The 1811, 1812 earthquakes caused at least 221 landslides along the bluffs that define the eastern boundary of the Mississippi River. So think about that. The ground is just chaos at this time. You had over 2,000 earthquakes. There's stuff shooting out of the ground. I mean, it sounds like hell on earth at this time. You got the Mississippi River running the wrong way, which is essentially like a tsunami if you think about it. Okay. There was a little town called Prairie, Arkansas, which sank into the ground slowly over the first day. The people soon found themselves knee-deep in water and had waded for several miles in the northeast direction to get up to high ground. The whole town simply disappeared with no trace of it today. And this is what we talk about with the mud floods. The Great Spirit is angry and wants us to return to ourselves and live in peace. You see, many children have sold their lands. The Great Spirit did not give them land to sell. Perhaps the cause is the Great Spirit is angry. Okay. In a tribal council in Indiana, In May, Tecumseh said, "Our hearts are good. They were never bad. Governor Harrison made war on our people in my absence. It was the will of God that he should do so. We hope that it please God that the white people may leave us in peace, and we will not disturb them. Neither have we done it, except when they have come to our village with the intention of destroying us. I will further state that had I been home, there would have been no bloodshed at the time." Speaking